Thank you for choosing the 12 by 12 pergola from Yardistry. We're confident you'll find the assembly straightforward as long as you work through each step in the manual. In addition, this Helpful Hints video offers tips and tricks that we've learned along the way for handling some of the more critical steps. Step 1. Inventory. Before beginning assembly, sort your inventory by laying out each of the wood parts and hardware on the ground. Then, using the stamps or marked reference numbers, take a few minutes to cross-reference each one with the list in the assembly manual. Remember, we are always here to help. Contact us if you find a part that is damaged or missing. Take a moment to record the carton ID stamp for each box that you receive. There is a space on page 10 of your manual to write down the first 5 digits that come before 14459 and also the letter at the end. Step 2. Post assemblies, part 1 through 3. In Step 2, when installing the post mounts to the bottom of the posts, keep the bolts loose. Hold each post mount tight to the bottom and inside of the post and attach with pan screws from the inside. It's okay to install these screws on an angle and from the bottom. Now go back and tighten the bolts. Lastly, place and attach a plinth on each side of the post so it is flush to the bottom and sides of the post. Step 3. Attach post block. Place a post block inside the top of a post. In the correct position, the holes in the bottom of the post block will align with the holes in the pergola post, and the middle of the post block will be flush to the top of the post. Secure with 2 bolts. It is okay if the post block moves a bit once the bolts are installed. Step 4. Trellis joist assembly. It is best to do Step 4 on a solid and flat raised surface. Interlock the notches on 2 trellis joist A's so the boards are flush. You'll know it is a trellis joist A because the boards will have 2 holes near the detailed end and 2 gusset holes along the bottom. Have one person look down the boards to make sure they are flush and straight while another secures with bolts. Next, interlock the notches on 2 trellis joist B's so the boards are flush. You'll know it is a trellis joist B because the boards will have only 1 hole near the detailed end. Again, have one person look down the boards to make sure they are flush and straight while another person secures with bolts. On each end of the trellis joist B assembly, attach 2 trellis brackets in the pre-drilled holes. On the short side of each trellis joist A and B assembly, center 1 splice. It can help to use a tape measure to find the center. When in place, secure with wood screws, then pre-drill through the countersunk holes and attach with lag screws. Step 5. Beam assembly. Continuing to work on a solid and flat raised surface, insert a connector block into each end of the beam middle, position so the first 2 holes line up with the holes on the beam middle. Then, loosely attach. Next, slide a beam end onto each of the connector blocks. In the correct position, the pilot holes in the beam end and beam middle will be on the same side. When aligned correctly, make sure the beam end and beam middle are tight together and secure with screws. Step 6. Post and beam assembly. Lay 2 post assemblies down on a flat surface with the bolt heads facing up. If they're not facing up, rotate the posts so that they are in the correct position. Next, place a beam assembly over the post blocks. Again, make sure the bolt heads on the beam assembly are facing upwards. Along the top of the beam, measure 12 inches from the very end of the beam end and mark it. Use a square to make a mark in the same spot along the bottom of the beam. Line up the outside edge of the post with this mark, square the post to the beam, and secure with bolts. Recheck that the post and beam are square, then place a gusset so it is centered on the post and beam. While a helper holds the gusset in place, pre-drill through the countersunk holes and secure with lag screws. Repeat on the other side of the beam assembly. Step 7. Attach trellis joist A assemblies. To build the frame, have 2 helpers stand the post and beam assemblies up. They must remain holding the assemblies until the frame is complete. On one end of the beam end assemblies, have another 2 people place a trellis joist A on either side of the post blocks. Check to make sure the bolt heads installed in the center of both the inside and outside trellis joist A assemblies are facing out. If not, flip the board around so they are, then loosely attach the trellis joist A assemblies to the post blocks with bolts. Along the top of the trellis joist A assembly, measure 13 inches from the very end of the assembly and mark it. Use a square to make a mark in the same spot along the bottom of the trellis joist A assembly. Line up the outside edge of the beam with this mark and square the trellis joist A assembly to the beam. When aligned, tighten the bolts. Repeat on the other side. Step 8. Attach long gussets. Start by squaring the post assemblies to the trellis joist A assemblies at each corner. Use your foot to gently kick and adjust the posts if needed. Place a long gusset so one end is tight to the post assembly and the other fits between the two trellis joist A assemblies. If the gusset doesn't fit between the trellis joists, loosen the bolts from step 7, place the gusset between the trellis joist A assemblies, then retighten the bolts. Once the gusset is in place, pre-drill and attach with a leg screw to the posts and secure to the trellis joists with bolts. Once all the gussets have been installed, check the squareness of the unit. It should measure 152 3/4 inches diagonally between posts in both directions. Again, use your foot to gently kick the posts and make any necessary adjustments. Step 9. Attach trellis joist B assemblies. On both sides of the beam, measure and mark 20 9/16 inches from the inside edge of each inner trellis joist A assembly. Place a trellis joist B assembly so the outside edge is at the marked location. In the correct spot, there should be 20 9/16 inches between trellis joist A and B. Center the trellis bracket over the beam and secure with pan screws at either end of trellis joist B. Repeat this process to install all trellis joist B assemblies. Take care to place the assemblies so the bolt heads in the center of the assemblies are all facing the same way. Step 10. Trellis assembly. When building the trellis assemblies, place a trellis bracket between the notches of a long and short trellis and secure with a bolt. The bottom of the bracket should stick out on the shorter bottom edge of the short trellis. Step 11. Attach trellis assemblies. To attach the trellis assemblies to the unit, start by measuring and marking 66 inches in from each end of the trellis joist A assemblies. You should be making 4 marks in total. Place 2 trellis assemblies on top of the trellis joists so the inside edge of each lines up with the mark and the pilot holes are centered over each trellis joist assembly. Take a look to see if the joints in the trellises alternate as shown here. When in the correct position, attach the trellis assemblies to each trellis joist with pan screws. Next, measure and mark 11 7/8 inches from the outside edge of the first 2 trellis assemblies, then place another trellis assembly so the inside edge is at the mark. There should be 11 7/8 inches between the 2 trellis assemblies. Again, make sure the joints in the trellis assemblies alternate and the pilot holes are centered over the trellis joists. Then secure with screws. Repeat these steps to install the remaining trellis assemblies. Step 12. Attach post trims. Using wood screws, attach 4 post trims to the top of each post. They should be tight to the bottom of each beam assembly, and the edges should be flush to the edge of the post. The rounded edge on the post trim should be towards the bottom when installed correctly. Step 13. Attach top post blocks. To finish off the installation, attach 2 post blocks to each post with wood screws. The post block should be flush to the sides and tight to the top of the post trim. If the post block does not fit in the space, loosen the bolt on the trellis joist A assemblies, make adjustments so the post block fits, then retighten the bolts.